Alright, today what I'm going to be doing is making this my car battery, which technically it actually has been my car battery for a little while, but I didn't have the wiring the way I wanted it, so I'm cleaning that up today. But in case you're wondering, if you drive a Honda CRX by chance, this has 600 cold cranking amps. It's only 70 bucks versus the $180 at the auto parts store for a battery, but this also only weighs like 12 pounds, so it's more lightweight as well, and at least compared to a Walmart battery, it performs much better. But I have these little brass terminals that I have gotten off the internet, and I'm going to be putting them on here because this came with bolts, and that was why it was hooked up in a way that I wasn't super happy with. I'm going to be cleaning it up. As you can see, I attached these wires here to the terminals and then attached them to the battery and then wrapped all that up in electrical tape, but I don't like how that looks, and I would prefer to use terminals because I also happen to have picked up some quick disconnect, so if I want to disconnect the battery I don't have to pull out a wrench and undo these bolts. So the way these terminals work, because if you're ever picking up one of these batteries, you got to know that they don't come with, you know, your standard terminals. These are supposed to, they just have a hole in them, and they're supposed to just bolt right onto there. So obviously I can't hold the camera and do that, but I will do that real quick, and then I'll turn back on the camera to tell you how it went. Here, I'm gonna go ahead and give this a try. So the bolt is down there, has the washer on it, and this is a little bit longer than the stock bolt, because I was considering trying to use the stock bolt, but there's not a lot of room in there, so I don't think I'd be able to get a socket on it. So I see why they used an Allen wrench. I'm just gonna get, I'm gonna get this started by hand. I was concerned that this would be a little bulky to fit, but seems to be all right. Let's get it started. And you gotta be careful not to over tighten, because you really don't want to mess up the threads on the battery. So just tight enough. Like, it's just now tight enough to remove the battery. So I'm gonna put the camera down and do this with both hands. Oh, one thing too that took me forever was trying to figure out bolt sizes for this, because I'll be honest, I didn't know anything about bolt sizes when I got started. So I had to make sure that these would be the same bolt size, and these are 6mm or 6M. I don't know why they don't just call it 6mm, but yeah, it can be shortened to 6M. So make sure, if you're getting terminals, to make sure that if you have one of these types of batteries that just have the bolts, make sure to find out what size bolt they are, and that your terminals that you're buying are the same size bolt. Okay, they seem to be on there pretty good. Tight, but not too tight, because you want it tight for a good connection. Loose connections will heat things up and start fires, so make sure it is nice and tight, but not so tight that you strip out the threads. Now here is something that I honestly didn't even think about till this moment, is these having the clearance to actually fit onto the battery. So if you notice, like if I try to go any direction, they're not sitting all the way down on there. And I mean, I'm sure that would work, but I would just be more comfortable if it was at least, you know, as close to flush as possible. So keep that in mind if you are changing your battery terminals, or if you know you need to change your battery terminals or ends, whatever you call these, to work. Because yeah, I wanted these because it's easy to add things onto. I can just flip this to disconnect it. It seemed very convenient, but I'm gonna have to make sure I hook it up in a way where I can keep it facing this direction. Alright, now that I have the tape off, you can see how I was connecting the battery to the car. This does work, but like I said, I wasn't very happy with it. And as you can tell, this is the original terminal that came on the car, and it's just not like, my biggest complaint with it is that it would never clamp down tight enough to actually squeeze. Like, you could always just slide this right off. And although convenient if you need to disconnect the battery for some reason, I don't like it being that loose all the time. So I'm definitely gonna be putting on the new one. Okay, have the positive on. Still not as clean as I want it to be, but this is much better than what I had before. Alright, I have my negative terminal on. I had to stick it a little bit further than I wanted to because the wires, I guess, were a bit smaller than a normal car wire, and these, even all the way clamped down, weren't really holding it tight, so had to scoot that one forward. Now on the batteries, I went ahead and I added a washer underneath each one to raise them up just a little bit more so that they can get at least a little bit of a better connection with the terminals. Also, my bad, I've been calling these terminals this whole time for some reason. Posts. These are the posts. The part that goes on it's a terminal. At least I think. I could be wrong. Sorry about that. One last thing about these posts that I got, I didn't notice somehow. One of them is bigger than the other. So I had these backwards and I couldn't get my negative terminal on the post. So yeah, make sure that the larger one goes on the positive and the smaller one goes on the negative. Alright, now this is my first experience with a quick disconnect battery terminal, but in order to get it the proper tightness, because every time I closed this it was still loose, seemed to be you wanted to tighten it up snugly by hand before clamping that over. So get that about as tight as you can by hand and then push that over, and that should make it nice and tight. And when reconnecting a battery, go positive first and negative second. And when disconnecting, negative first, positive second. Or at least that's what Google said. Alright, and there's my tiny battery connected to the car. AGM battery. That's absorbed glass mat, I think is what that stands for. Yeah. Let's go crank it up and see how it does. I got my voltmeter. I have to reset my radio back to red. Started. Alright. Cranking way better than it did before. Better connections. And these are the old terminals that were on there. I could never get the negative to actually fully clamp down on anything. It was always slightly loose, which technically made it a quick disconnect, so I could just slide it off, but I didn't like that it was never really all that tight. And the positive was replaced at some point, but it just looks rough, so they needed to be replaced. Hopefully this has been helpful to somebody who was considering getting one of those little batteries that are marketed as a backup battery for a sound system. But they do have the capabilities of being your actual car battery, and just lighter and cheaper. Like I said, this saves me $100 on my car battery. Even with buying battery terminals and posts, it's still significantly cheaper. So I haven't had any problems. I've been driving around with it in there for probably about a month now, and it's been perfectly fine. I was having an issue where my car was dying every day, but that was unrelated. And even for the majority of the month, the battery being dead every single day, coming out, having to jump it off every day, once I fixed the parasitic drain issue, the battery acted like that never happened. So it seems to be keeping up to the test of time pretty well. I mean, I know it's only been a month, but like I said, that's pretty rough, completely discharging and then recharging a battery every single day. So thanks for watching. It's been Postal 268.